Welcome to the Always On podcast. I'm your host, Duncan MacPherson. And on this podcast, our objective is to empower our audience, which are very high caliber fee-for-service professionals, to always be working on their business and on themselves personally and professionally. On today's podcast, I had a really solid conversation with Natasha Kennedy. Natasha is a Pareto-certified coach and a very capable speaker and consultant, especially in the areas of family investment legacy, continuity and succession, and preparing heirs. So she speaks to advisors, she speaks on behalf of advisors to their clients, and she has a process for how to do a family call, a family meeting, and to embed the concept of family investment legacy into an advisor's value proposition. So hopefully you enjoy this conversation. If you do, please like and share and tell your colleagues. And of course, if you have any ideas for themes and topics down the road that you'd like to hear in this podcast, just let us know. Thanks for listening. As a financial professional, you already know that you actually manage three things. You manage money, you manage a business, and you manage people. And there is one profound aspect of your value proposition that actually impacts all three. And that is your ability to engage your clients in addressing their continuity and succession, family investment legacy, and preparing heirs issues. With the demographic forces accelerating, this is a profound unmet need that can make you indispensable, amplify your fee worthiness, and improve your referability. And I can't wait to have this conversation with a proven authority in this space. Natasha Kennedy began in the financial services arena and then pursued the credential as a critical mental health counselor, a therapist, and today has converged those areas of expertise into a deliverable, presenting to financial advisors and individuals and families on how to prepare heirs and how to address the many pieces of the puzzle regarding family investment legacy. So Natasha, thanks for being on Always On.
Thanks so much, Duncan. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, as I've said, you will present to financial advisors so they can get their heads around embedding these deliverables into their process. You will speak on behalf of financial advisors, either in person or virtually, to their clients to provide this value-added service that people really find to be of value. And you'll even go so far as to provide consulting to financial advisory teams to level up and deepen their engagement with their clients. So we've got a lot to talk about here. Let's lay the groundwork first. We all know about the great wealth transfer. You can't go a day without hearing about this. Let's talk a little bit about what we mean by that and why it's to the point of being non-optional that advisors find ways to build this into their approach.
No, it's a great point, Duncan. I mean, we hear about the great wealth transfer all the time, but what does that actually mean? So if we take a step back and break it down, by the year 2048, just over 20 years from now, it's projected that 124 trillion will move from baby boomers to the next generation. And of that, about 105 trillion will go directly to heirs. So this means that essentially more than half of all household wealth in the US will be changing hands within a single generation. And, when we talk about the kids here, we're not talking about toddlers playing with toys. We're talking about adult inheritors, right? People in their 20s, 30s, 40s, even 50s, who will suddenly find themselves responsible for managing significant wealth that they didn't build and in many cases weren't taught how to handle. And here's where I think it gets really interesting and a bit risky is 87% of inheritors say that they plan to use a financial advisor during the wealth transfer. But 9 out of 10, so 90%, don't even consider their family's financial advisor when deciding who to work with. And, I think it's important to just let that sink in, right? Close to 90% of inheritors do plan to have a financial advisor, but 9 out of 10 don't even consider their family's financial advisor when deciding who to work with. And so what we have here is essentially the vast majority intending to seek guidance, but actively choosing not to work with the advisor that their parents trusted. So, taking another step back, right? Essentially what we're watching here is the most financially prepared generation, the boomers, passing their wealth to the least prepared generations, largely millennials and Gen Z. And this isn't because younger generations are disinterested or they're not capable. It's because there's been this breakdown in communication, in education, and inclusion. And let's be honest, as a culture, we love to stereotype generations, right? We say Gen Z is self-absorbed or that millennials are entitled or whatever it might be. But here's the truth. It's really the fact that the lack of preparation is not the next generation's fault. It's simply the result of a gap that no one has really taken the time to intentionally close. So there's a lot going on there, but I think the main point is that families aren't failing to have these conversations because they don't care. They're not maliciously leaving their kids in the dark. It's just hard. It's emotional. It requires vulnerability, planning, intention. And in the chaos of day-to-day life, honestly, it's easy to put off these big guiding conversations for another day and then another, and then that ultimately becomes forever. And I think that's really where the advisor comes in, right? In a world where financial advice has become so commoditized with portfolios that are automated, information's everywhere. So what makes your work truly fee-worthy is not just what you know, but what help your clients face, right? As an advisor, you're in this unique and powerful position to really gently refocus your clients, facilitate some of these conversations, and help them protect the legacy that they've worked so hard all of their lives to build.
Okay, so yeah, you covered a lot of ground there. The stats are staggering. And even if you break that down into 3 to 5 year sort of windows and increments, those are big numbers, big forces. And it's interesting. There's all kinds of reasons and studies around why this has become a blind spot or an unmet need or a gap within so many affluent families, especially the first generation self-made affluent families. I do want to talk a little bit about why clients maybe have the perception that they should look elsewhere. Maybe they've drifted into a pattern of familiarity where they know what they know about their advisor. They're not aware that the advisor has this ability to pull together all of the issues around continuity and succession and family investment legacy. What are your thoughts on that?
No, it's a great question. And to your point, some of these statistics really are staggering. And so it's kind of the natural question is, right, why does this dynamic exist? Why is this happening? And it's happening because there's been this huge breakdown in communication, which means that for advisors, it really comes down to helping clients talk. It's simple, right? And your clients are smart, they're capable, they're highly successful people. So in some ways, it's kind of like, okay, why do they need help talking? And it's not because the topic is intellectually challenging, right? Wealth transfer conversations, they're not technically difficult, But what makes them challenging is that they're emotionally complex. They're not
Right.
cognitively complex necessarily. And so clients aren't avoiding these conversations because they don't understand the vital importance of estate planning or the importance of preparing their heirs. They're avoiding them because these discussions they have the potential to become complicated, emotional, or revealing in ways that feel uncomfortable to people. And I think the interesting thing, Duncan, is that when these conversations finally do happen, for whatever reason, they almost always lead to relief, which is one of
Oh,
the best emotions,
oh
right? That you can generate. And they lead to clarity, more trust. But to get there, people often need to face some really uncomfortable truths because these conversations force people to look at parts of life that they may try to keep in the background.
yeah.
And with this, there are so many things, your own mortality, your children's limitations, family dynamics might not look the way that you hoped that they would, conflict that might surface, the fear of being judged or misunderstood. There's so much that really gets wrapped up into this. And these conversations, they're never purely financial. It's always in some way tied to identity, to values, emotions.
Mhm.
So in many ways, the avoidance, it's not about ignorance, it's just about self-protection in some way. And it's almost like exercise or therapy, right? You know that exercise and a healthy diet is the way to actually lose weight, or that talking through problems almost always helps. But it's the fact that these things stir up all this noise in our minds and we avoid them because they're uncomfortable, not because we don't know that we should eat well or go on the diet or talk or do whatever it might be.
Well, I'm going to assume that the complexity is a big issue. Uh, it's interesting from an advisory perspective of the immutable laws that exist in life and in business. Kydland's law is so profound, which is just the art and the exercise of getting something out of your head written down and then organized. You're halfway
Mm.
there in terms of dealing with a problem or a project just by going through the exercise. So I can imagine that an advisor that just opens up the conversation and starts to lay out a very precise roadmap that's not fueled by good intentions alone, but an actual methodical process, a checklist. That actually reminds me of Gilbert's law, which is not leaving someone to their own devices, giving them an actual framework. I'm going to assume that that's one of the things you do with advisors is provide, sort of in the spirit of beginning with the end in mind, saying, this is where this will go. When you open up this conversation with your clients, when you show them that you actually have a track to get them to addressing this unmet need, that's where part of that relief must come from for the advisor, not just for their clients.
Exactly. And it's really the how, right? And the roadmap that is so valuable. How do you build it into your process? How do you start speaking to clients about these topics in a way that's natural to you? I think that's really important
Yeah.
too. How do you do this in a way that's not opportunistic, right? How do you embed this into your process so it's something that you just do naturally? It's part of how you serve your clients. It's not this different thing that all of a sudden you're starting to do. It's simply part of the process that you already have.
Okay, so it's interesting. Just on a personal note, like I know a lot of people, and because I'm at this stage in my life, I've got adult kids. I'm looking around at other families in terms of how they interact with their kids, grandkids now in some cases, and there's examples and there's warnings, right?
Mm.
Warnings, don't do this. Examples, that's fantastic. I got to tell you, Natasha, the best thing my wife did with our kids back in the day when they were, teenagers, early teenagers. Of course, they both wanted phones.
Mm.
My wife said, yeah, no problem. You can have phones, but you're paying for them, like skin in the game. That was a proverbial game changer because they just realized it wasn't just this thing that magically appeared. They had to actually go out and make money. They had to pay for it. It was in their name. It changed the dynamic. So I'm not saying that in and of itself removed entitlement, but it sure helped. So, that's the interesting thing. There's an art in science, right? The quantitative is get all of the different elements and all the pieces of the puzzle in place. But I think nirvana for a family is when you get to a point where you are incredibly well prepared with your heirs and as a family in general with respect to the responsibility and legacy of affluence. But you also simultaneously engineer an environment where the kids don't need it, right? Like they're self-sufficient. They're out in the world being productive, being impactful. I think a financial advisor can find a sweet spot where they're subtly addressing both sides of the equation. It's a very exciting issue. And I think in the spirit of professional contrast, this is where an advisor can grow up market to more complex client needs, add a higher degree of fulfillment and purpose to their value, and then impact clients in a way that will create some referability. Like the more I think about it, the more powerful I think this really is.
Exactly. And Duncan, I think that point about your own children too is so great because it shows that you can address these topics, have these conversations, and also do it in a way that doesn't lead to entitlement. And that's another part of this whole equation. And I think it's really what prevents people oftentimes from having these conversations is, wait, hang on, I don't want to ruin my kids. And one of the strongest emotional barriers is this deep protective fear that parents, especially first generation wealth builders, really carry. If I tell them too much, it'll ruin them. Will it demotivate them? Will they lose their ambition? Entitlement creep in. And there are so many ways in which that's not necessarily correct, but it's embedded in our thought process. And so we leave these conversations unsaid, or we don't step in with the idea of, hey, why don't you pay for this thing that you want? And yes, you should have it if you want it, but within limitations.
Yeah, do your chores and cut the grass and you can actually bring this to life yourself and feel good about yourself. And instead of, and listen, I get it, because with the proliferation of information in the last 20, 30, 40 years, the access, the world's gotten a little scarier. And parents, the unintended consequence of trying to insulate your kids from some, bad issues, some darkness and other things, scary. The unintended sort of ripple effect there is sometimes creating a bit of learned helplessness, which is, by the way, is a fascinating study. There's variations of it. Some of it's actually bewildering, but I first learned about learned helplessness. They were training elephants. So they take a baby elephant and put a massive chain around its back foot and spike it to the ground, and it would pull when it was, and just having, as it grew up and got massive, just having that around its foot just program them, don't even try. And I think sometimes people say, look, and this was covered in The Millionaire Next Door by Tom Stanley, first generation affluents, a lot of them have convinced themselves, hey, look, I don't want Junior to have to go through all the mess and chaos and adversity that I went through. I'd like their lives to be a little easier. Meanwhile, it's the adversity that created the grit and resilience that amped up their personal responsibility and self-motivation, perseverance, and all of these qualities that are tough to teach. They have to come from experiential learning. We can't deprive our kids and rob them of those experiences. But again, that balance, insulate, safe, but get out there and stir the pot.
If you're like most advisors, you're constantly balancing two priorities: growth and consistency. That's why we built the Turnkey Advisor membership, a community of like-minded advisors who understand the importance of working on the business, not just in it. Membership includes proven strategies for growing, teaming, scaling, or exiting with full resources and support, including access to Pareto Academy, things once only available to our private coaching clients. If you're serious about bringing structure and scalability to your business, this is where consistent results are achieved. For a limited time, get 50% off with our holiday special. Learn more at paretosystems.com/turnkey.
And it's interesting. I've been talking to a lot of advisors, Natasha, about this book, Die with Zero. And I'm wondering, if that's taken off because there are so many self-made affluent people who said, I don't want to wreck my kids with all this money. I'm going to go out and spend it and let them, fend for themselves. I'm wondering if that's where that theme sort of was born out of. I don't know what your thought is on that.
I mean, it certainly could be, right? It allows you to avoid that really difficult conversation. Or in many ways, too, it's just simply the uncertainty, right? The idea of, I don't know what's going to happen when I'm gone, and I don't want to think about that. And that avoidance creeps into our lives in so many different ways. But the idea for me, right, die with zero, it's kind of like, okay, well, then I don't have to have the conversation.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, that's actually a very good point. So from your perspective, let's talk a little bit about the emotional side. There's the tactical, and I know you're very, very strong in providing a very well laid out approach to demystify all of the different issues, but you still have the emotional elements of inheritance and affluence and responsibility of all of that. Let's talk a little bit about that. How do you bring that into the conversation, whether you're talking to a family or you're talking to an advisor who is going to try to relay this? How do you bring that into the mix?
No, it's a great question. And when we think about inheritance, we usually jump to assets, accounts, trusts, real estate, like the tangible things. But oftentimes the biggest emotional inheritance that we pass down, usually without realizing it, is far more subtle, which is actually just the silence around these conversations. And perhaps it's counterintuitive, but the thing is that this silence becomes a legacy all on its own. And it's one that creates confusion, mistrust, oftentimes resentment in the next generation. And it often shows up most clearly when family legacy planning conversations are not accomplished, right? They're left unhad for whatever reason. And so if I had to really distill it down, what's the one emotional piece wrapped up in all of this? It's really that idea of inherited silence. It's a real pattern, and silence gets passed down just like wealth does. And the thing again is that it's not because parents want to hide things. They don't, largely speaking, but it's because they genuinely don't know how to start these conversations, how to talk about money in a way that feels healthy. They worry about saying the wrong thing, about revealing too much, too little, triggering conflict. So the default becomes quiet, and then that gets passed down. And I think the real crux of it is silence is not this neutral space that people think that it is, right? It doesn't keep the peace. It doesn't necessarily protect relationships. It doesn't even reduce the complexity at hand. In reality, it amplifies all of these things. Yeah. And silence itself becomes part of the family story. And the real kicker is that it's not neutral. It's always interpreted. So silence does not feel like safety to the next generation. It feels like secrecy. And the secrecy of it all starts to breed stories in everyone's mind, right? When heirs or children aren't included in the conversations, they don't just not think about them, right? It's like not wanting to bring something up because you don't want to upset someone who just had a huge loss in their life or just went through something really tragic. So not bringing it up because it's uncomfortable and you don't want to make them think about it. Well, they are thinking about it.
Yeah.
You're just not talking to them about it, right? And so the thing is that with the silence, you start telling your own story. You have to. That's how the mind works. So the story becomes, okay, maybe mom and dad don't trust me. Maybe there's no plan. Maybe they're avoiding something. Maybe I'm not getting anything. Maybe they think I'm not ready. And so when there's no communication, the mind fills in the blanks,
Yeah.
and human nature is to fill it in with the worst case version.
Well, and it's funny, you remind me of a friend whose kid, one of their kids said, "Mom, are we rich?" And the mom said, "Well, I am. You're not, but I am." And I guess I don't know where that came from. I've heard that somewhere, but I guess they had a good laugh over that. But it just opened up a conversation and just proves your point that they're thinking about it. So why not address it and be proactive? I'm wondering that silence dynamic, that's probably why a lot of advisors don't go there with their clients, because they don't want to rock the boat. But there's an element of risk. I mean, advisors spend so much time on the many moving parts of wealth management and risk management. Like, I think it was Warren Buffett who said, rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, don't forget the first rule. Like, I think they're so wired with a risk management mindset that they don't want to risk the relationship by opening up this can of worms. So a question for you, because we wrote this white paper on AI and how that can be a very useful tool in one example to create subject matter expertise and thought leadership and reputational equity. So we've had many advisors, I've had many conversations with them about using AI to create content, become a content machine around these topics. And I'll give you an example, and I'd like your thoughts on this. So, and I've talked about this endlessly, but this one advisor specifically, we said, okay, who is your ideal client? Like, who is perfect? Like, who are you best suited for? And sure enough, it was a first generation, self-made, successful business owner, professional, executive, for all the right reasons, right? Zero micromanagement, zero fixation on fees, total appreciation for the relationship, full predisposition to advocacy, all of this. So I said, okay, let's competitor proof, go deeper and replicate these relationships. Where's the unmet need? It was in this topic right here. So it led to the conversation. I said, I want you to create a white paper on continuity, succession, family investment legacy, and preparing heirs. So I told him, I said, ask AI, ask chat for a 1-page summary, the 5 salient points of Entitlemania by Richard Watts. Take that 1 page. Then do The Millionaire Next Door with a specific focus on family investment legacy from that book, because there's some really good elements there. Number 3 was Beer Money by the Stroh family, which is sort of an expose on family dysfunction because of mass wealth. Next book was Every Family's Business by Tom Deans. And that is why, so many families keep kicking the can down the road. Anyway, there's about 6 books. They drew out these summaries, 1-page summaries, and then took the summaries and mashed them together. And then the team injected in their own perspective, some of their own stories and experiences, and then wrapped it by positioning it, saying, we as a team, as a financial services business, are addressing our own continuity and succession issues, not just because of our business, but also our families. It occurred to us there's a reason why we have 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation clients, and we've decided to make this an elevated aspect of our value proposition. So we're creating this thought leadership with this white paper. They sent it to clients. They sent it to strategic partners. This became sort of like a Trojan horse to come out of the sort of iceberg where it's like, expand your thinking. Like, this is actually what we can do for you over the lifetime of our relationship. Now, it's early days, but this has been profoundly fulfilling for the team. It's having an impact and resonating with the people receiving it. It's being positioned as a bridge for introductions. And it all came out of just this conversation and then AI. And by the way, on the white paper, like, you want to disclose your sources and how you formatted it. We source this information using AI and from these books. We assembled this. What are your thoughts on that as a bridge to open up the conversation, just to predispose the audience to this approach? Thoughts?
Answer to your question is AI can absolutely be leveraged in this topic. And I think oftentimes it really dovetails with all that we've been talking about, is that we know how to do so many of these things, right? We know how to create a meeting agenda now with AI. I think we type into ChatGPT, I want to have a conversation with my client about family legacy planning. How do I do that? Create an agenda that lasts 45 minutes and isn't too pushy. It's going to give it to you, right? And so you might think, okay, well, what room there is then left to talk about this topic? And it goes back to what we were talking about originally, which is the idea that people are uncomfortable having these conversations. And so that's why I still exist, right? Why it's still a relevant topic. It's the same reason that you see fad diets come out all the time, right? Again, it's not that people don't know that they need to eat a healthy meal to lose weight or whatever it might be. It's just that they don't want to be uncomfortable. And so the conversation continues, right? And that's what gets me so excited about the topic, is if I can help people feel comfortable enough to start broaching this topic and to stop avoiding it, to use the tools at their disposal, AI, to create a white paper, right? Again, like what it's really not that hard. And AI can help you do so much, right? Think of 20 educational events that I can put on for the top 20% of my client base to help their children understand more about financial well-being, financial services. Like, it's all there. It's really just getting yourself to a point where you feel comfortable enough to broach it in a way that's not opportunistic, that you understand how to build it into your process in a way that's authentic to you.
Well, and I'm just going to throw out two of my favorite timeless sound bites. Number one, dig your well before you're thirsty. Like, start making these investments into the family tree well in advance, of the heirs establishing relationships with their own financial advisor. And with that, only the paranoid survive. Like, you can't take a relationship for granted. Like, even just reminding the world, there is a reason why we have second and third generation clients. It's because continuity and succession, family investment legacy, and preparing heirs is a major part of our process. It's a value-added service that clients really find to be of value. We've developed and refined a process, A through Z, all the different steps to make sure this is addressed. It's again, it's not what you say, it's what they hear. It's like, okay, you've got this. It's not just that you're a good person, like, you've cracked the code. I don't know how to do this, so demystify it for me. You demystify it, you will commoditize your value. Clients will fixate on what you're worth. You will become indispensable. I'm going to assume that, we talked about this white paper concept, but you've probably seen this too. Advisors that have started putting this messaging into other forms, like they're doing events, they're doing video, like they're not talking about this is how we manage money and this is the investments we select. A lot of clients, like they don't need to know that they just need to know. They don't need to know what you know. They just need to know that you know, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But these other aspects of your deliverables are so profound. So, Natasha, talk to me about some of the tools and deliverables that you equip advisors with. Like, how do you actually help them get out of no man's land and actually start to bring this up with clients? Can we go there?
For sure. I think the first piece of it is really getting yourself to a place where this offering is authentic to you. You actually see it as part of your own process, and therefore it's inherently not opportunistic. I think when I think about what are the key pitfalls for advisors, it's not genuinely connecting with the topic and therefore somehow coming off as opportunistic. And there are several ways that you can do that, right? One is just reconnecting with your own purpose. Why are you a financial advisor, right? What gets you up at the beginning of the day? I mean, it's probably not looking at spreadsheets. It probably has something to do with helping your clients navigate their lives or prepare for the future, or think about your own larger guiding purpose and let that why for you personally, guide your work. And when it starts guiding your work, then something like legacy planning naturally is a part of your process. It's a part of what you do. It's a part of your stewardmanship for your clients. And so I think that's the first part, like reconnect with your own purpose for being in this world. And then two, using social proof, right? This is something that you already do with other clients. How has it been successful? Talking about the fact that this is something that's embedded in your process. It's something that you found certain clients really value and why, and using some stories there. And then three, the idea of personal congruency, right? The fact that you wouldn't ask your clients to do something that you're not already doing yourself. And you're close with your top clients, right? The top clients that drive 80% of your business, like sharing with them, I do this with my own family and I've found it really helpful. And sometimes these conversations, they're so easy to leave unhad, but it's not for any reason. It's either we're just uncomfortable or the day-to-day got away from us. And so using that authenticity and showing them, I do this myself really goes a long way. And so I think that those are a few of the considerations just to keep in mind, when advisors are saying, how can I start to broach this topic? And then to your point, Duncan, there are so many different ways to actually start doing it and to start connecting with the next generation. For me, educational events is huge. How can you provide some form of education for your clients' children? They don't have to become clients, right? Reiterating the fact that you're simply a resource to the people that your clients care about, and their children fall into that bucket. They don't have to become a client. Not at all. You're there as a sounding board. You're there to help them. And again, this is not for every client. It is not for every client. I can't say that enough, right? This is for your top clients that drive 80% of your business, where you say, I want to be a resource to them. And that's how you earn your fee. And ironically, by saying, they don't have to become a client, or I absolutely am happy to provide referrals if they're looking for someone of a different anything, specialty, age, gender, that you're willing to do that. You're willing to connect them, no hard feelings. That statement in and of itself can lead to a client because it feels real.
Okay, so let me frame that, because you again covered a lot of ground, but it's clear that you have not only embedded the Pareto philosophy and approach into your deliverable, but you bring it to life in terms of where the relationships are going. Like this is so powerful. So the why, like I can just imagine the rejuvenation of an advisor's conviction as to why they became a financial advisor. It just gives them more confidence to go there and to actually build out the how. The social proof, like that's why Google reviews exist for resorts and restaurants, and people want to know what other people are experiencing when it comes to making a decision, which is why video testimonials are so profound, and those guardrails Like you're not allowed to talk about performance and specific product, but you can definitely have a client tell your story through their perspective, through their lens, in terms of how you impacted their family, in terms of demystifying the continuity and succession elements. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then the congruency, like you injecting your own experience to humanize this. Yeah, we're doing this ourselves. We're doing this as a team. We're doing this with our clients. Like it just creates such a compelling story. And you know what? I think it's an African proverb that says it takes a village to raise a kid. I mean, when a financial advisor is a third party comes along and says, I have these deliverables for you, right? The parents, the first generation affluence to address this and feel good about this. But we also have some deliverables that your kids can consume. That's got to be a profound value-added service as well. Thoughts?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And it's more holistic, right? It's even putting something together in an email where you say, "Hey, I was thinking of you when I saw this. Please
Mm-hmm.
forward it along to your son or daughter who just graduated college and is trying to figure out how health insurance works or
Yeah.
how to buy their first home." Or like there are so many little windows that if you really look for them are there all the time, and they're not opportunistic. They're genuine too, because you do care about your clients. And again, this is not for everyone. It's not for every single client. It's for your top clients, and you're showing them that you are worth your fee. And also too, just thinking about, what does the next generation want, and really tapping into that. Like how are their different preferences out there? How are there similar preferences that might be out there? And saying, okay, if we know that this upcoming generation loves a short form video that tells them the 101 to buying your first car or to starting
Mm.
to save in a 401k, like that's why I always come back to education as such an easy way to tap into this next generation. And they're craving it. They're looking for it. They like it in bite-sized pieces. And it's something that advisory teams can absolutely provide.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so let's talk about this. So I know that you will do a presentation either online or in person for a
Mm-hmm.
group of advisors to help them get their heads around how to integrate this into their process. I know that. I know you will do a presentation on behalf of advisors for either virtually or in person for their clients. Because again, that's a huge value added service. Advisors creating events where they bring in thought leaders to address these blind spots and unmet needs. So I know you will do that. Do you, and I do know that you will consult with an advisory team,
Mm-hmm.
sequentially on how to actually deploy this predictably and methodically. Let's get into the weeds a little bit on that. Like, do you get into the family phone call, the family meeting, like break down and unpack some of the actual like the resources you'll provide for a team?
Yes, absolutely. That's a great point and great run through of what it is that I do provide. And yes, we will go through a family call. We will, in certain instances too, if someone says, I have a client that I don't know this will resonate with them and I'm looking for a way in, we can collaborate on that and brainstorm together. So it can be very tailored. It can be
Mm.
a step back from that, and we can say, okay, so you do have a family meeting coming up. You have already made that ask. You have the time on the calendar. You have 45 minutes. How do you fill those 45 minutes? How do you open the meeting? What are the main items to hit? How do you want to present these items, right? Are you actually talking about dollar amounts, or are you talking about bigger picture ideas? Another misnomer too, I think, is once the plan is shared, once the conversation is had, it's set in stone. And
Mm.
that's absolutely not the case, right? It's simply the first step. And so within this whole process, reminding your clients that this is a dialogue, it's a conversation, it evolves. Just because we've spoken about it once doesn't mean it's over and that everyone has to make their peace with it and walk away just smiling even if they're upset. It's not that at all. And oftentimes these conversations go so much better than advisors and clients themselves could ever have expected because again, they create that relief. And so getting back to what it is that I'll do with clients is help them walk through, this is an agenda that you can use. And here are a few kind of scripted sentences. If this is something that resonates with you, use it. If it isn't, toss it. But it's a way to just start thinking about how you can broach the subject in a way that's authentic to you. And I think that's what's most important, particularly in one-on-one work is, okay, how do you work with your clients and how can we build this into your process in a way that's actually you?
So you can be an accountability partner, sort of a sidecar, so the advisor's not reinventing the wheel. They have confidence and predictability. I will tell you this, and you're right. The plan is a piece of the puzzle. Planning is fluid and dynamic. And I'm having more and more conversations with advisors who are saying some of their best, most significant, complex, long-term clients are starting to contact them and being influenced by their kids. Like their kids are coming to their parents who are clients of the advisor saying, hey, let's go look at some crypto. Let's get some precious metals. Let's invest in rare earth and, AI. And, there's this force, this push and pull dynamic. So the advisors got to be engaged in a very proactive, predictive way to make sure the relationship is not drifting or straying and catch these little mid-course corrections quickly. There's nothing more powerful than, yes, saying to a client, yes, these are very, very good points. Let's table them for our next strategy and tactical meeting. In the meantime, let's stick to the plan. Let's trust the process, just being that voice of reason, because there's all this outside noise and influence that could be undermining the bigger picture. So this is really great stuff. Natasha, how can somebody get a hold of you? I know we're connected on LinkedIn. What's the best way for somebody to reach you to explore this a little bit more fully?
LinkedIn is great. I think LinkedIn is probably the best way. And then we can exchange email, phone, and go from there and just see what your needs are, how we can meet them. And I'm always there to be helpful. I think oftentimes it can really vary what people are looking for. And so we can always figure out what's best for you at any given point in time.
Okay, terrific. Are you open to doing a webinar where we can get into sort of the nuts and bolts, show some of the tools and the templates and the scripting and the positioning, and share some success stories of advisors who did open up this conversation and got a result?
Absolutely. And that's something that I've done and hope to continue to do. I mean, it's really talking through some of that social proof, right? Helping advisors see how others have done it really successfully. And then also giving you that roadmap and game planning as we go, right? So if something doesn't feel natural, you can voice that right away and we can find something that does. So making it customized and something that's truly natural and authentic, I think I keep coming back to, but that's really the most important with this topic when it comes to clients having the conversations themselves and advisors starting the conversation.
Well, I've had clients who have had you in absolutely sterling feedback and results. So we need to capture some of this on video and archive it and make it available to a wider audience. So I would like to schedule that webinar under one condition.
What is that?
That Dorothy be there.
I know. She can certainly be there.
Is
Say
she
hi,
near? Oh,
my
there's...
love. She's been held down, but now she can be released. Oh my gosh.
Let's make her famous.
I know, right? She could be. She has a cute little face, but she goes nuts sometimes. I know.
Yeah, very cute
right,
face.
My love?
Cavalier or Spaniel?
She's both. She's a Cavalier. I think she's technically a Cavalier King Charles Spaniel. It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So she's both.
You can see great energy there. Okay,
I
listen,
know.
phenomenal job. You own this space. Like, it's really good because you've got the financial and the technical elements and credibility, but you've also got that bedside manner and
Thank
the
you.
relationship component. So congratulations, you're doing a absolutely stellar job.
Thanks,
Cool.
Duncan. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being here, and we'll get that webinar scheduled. And yeah,
Awesome.
again, everybody, track her down, figure out how you can put her to work for your clients or for your team on behalf of your clients. You'll be very glad you did.
Thank you for listening to Always On with Duncan MacPherson, where our objective is to enable professionals to always be working on their business and on themselves. Want to learn more about Duncan and his team? Visit Pareto-systems.com. Don't forget to click the follow button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and/or guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Pareto Systems. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only.